Hi guys. Okay, first I just want to start by saying I know that my camera is kind of icky, so hopefully I'll get a better one as time goes on. But today I kind of just wanted to talk about temporary basal rates and basal patterns. Just kind of some of the things that I've learned or some of the things that I was looking for when I was when I was learning my body and diabetes, so even before the pump, but also as I got the pump, I kind of wanted to, there were some things I was looking for. For instance, I knew also, I guess I should preface this by saying this is kind of geared towards women. Men are welcome to watch or listen as well. But my first topic is going to be very much about women. So, when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I asked my doctor then, after a couple months into it, does having your menstrual cycle make your blood sugars go up? And this is when they still thought it was type 2. And at the time she said, well, it could maybe a little, but not enough for extra insulin or anything. Then as time went on, I noticed myself, through testing, that I tend to be a little bit higher during that time of the month. So when I finally was diagnosed as type 1 and I was, my basal insulin was backed off, I'm now being given also fast-acting insulin, I was kind of able to see more what the basal insulin did in the background. And again, would very much notice that during that time, my needs would change. My fasting blood sugars would skyrocket sometimes not. Sometimes I would wake up in the 200s, they would just be way up there. So I kind of knew that my menstrual cycle very much does affect my blood sugar. So even before I got the pump, I did some research to see, what people did about these kinds of things. How did that work out? So I kind of just want to put it out because I didn't come across a whole lot of information. So I kind of just wanted to put a video out there to give a little bit of information. And what I've done with my pump and how I figured out what I do. Okay, so with the Medtronic pump, and probably with other pumps too, I'm sure, but I only have experience with my Medtronic pump. So you can set basal patterns, which is a little bit different than setting basal rates throughout your day. Sometimes you need a little bit more background insulin at night than you do during the day, or vice versa. And you can set different rates at different times of day. But this is not what I'm talking about. I actually have a basal pattern. So what I have, my standard pattern, I have 3 patterns. My standard pattern is set at 0.3 units per hour. That gets me through most of a month. As soon as I start ovulating, it's like clockwork. I can tell my fasting numbers will start to creep up a little bit. I just know. I know when it's happening, and I will. My trainer and I talked about it again this month. When I first started with the pump, I was actually ovulating then, and the basal rate was okay. It wasn't bad. But then as soon as I started my cycle, it was way too much insulin, and I was having some lows. So that's how we kind of figured that out. And then now that I'm ovulating again, I talked to my trainer and said, hey, listen, I want to try this pattern thing out. I think it would help. And absolutely, she was there with me, and gave me the go ahead to do it. So now I have, like I said, my regular standard rate is 0.3 units per hour. Then I have pattern A, which is 0.35 units per hour. And then pattern B, which is 0.4 units per hour. Right now I'm running on pattern A, but I've noticed that my fastings have been just a little bit higher than normal. Like it was 156 this morning. Also, there's times where I'll go sometimes 6 hours without eating a meal, or sometimes even a little bit longer if it's a busy day at work. And just before I eat my meal, I can tell if my numbers are higher or lower than they should be with that long without a meal. And I kind of notice that they're tending to go a little up. So I'm probably going to switch over to pattern B, which is going to give me that 0.4 units per hour. And usually that'll get me through until the day that my menstrual cycle starts. Usually sometime during that first 24 hours is when my needs drastically change and I have to go back to my regular 0.3 units per hour. So far, that's what's worked. This is all still new, but so far that has seemed to be what's worked. Now that I have the sensor, I'm hoping to be able to see those patterns a lot more. But I don't know, me and the sensor are still trying to get on good terms with each other. So I also just wanted to mention that the way that we kind of figured out what patterns to use was by using temporary basals. So for instance, when I started ovulating this time around, I set a temp basal at 110% for 6 hours. I would let it go back to my regular basal rate for, probably another 6 hours and kind of test it to see what it would do. And if it would be a little bit higher, I'd go back to that temp. If my blood sugar was a little high, I would go back to that temp basal rate of 110 or 120%. And after 24 hours of pretty much being on a temp basal, consistently, that was when we kind of determined, okay, that's how much I need for right now. And then so back to that, if any of you ladies that are out there, if you're, wondering how you can handle the highs and lows during that time, if you haven't already figured it out, that's how I handle mine. And it seems to work very well for me. And I very much love that the pump can do that. And I don't have to figure out anymore on my flex pen how many, do I only do 2 extra units for this 6 hour or 12-hour span, or do I just like not having to figure that out. The pump makes it much easier for me to be able to do that. Another thing I just wanted to mention kind of quickly about temporary basal rates is drinking. So there's a lot of things I've seen on drinking and diabetes, and while we all know it's never good to binge drink and be a diabetic, there are diabetics who drink, and I'm going to be real. And when I want people, what I want is when people come across my videos, I want them to see an honest person talking about an honest life. So I do drink. I don't drink a lot, but this is what, and I've only been able to really kind of test this with beer. I haven't, I'm not a huge liquor drinker, and I drink wine, but I haven't tested it with wine. I haven't drank wine since I've been on the pump. I've only had the beer. But like, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before that, I had a Halloween party, and I knew I'd be having a couple of beers. So I set my temporary basal rate at, I probably shouldn't have done it this low, but you live and learn. We'll test again eventually when I drink again. But I set my temporary basal rate at 75% because I knew that it was going to be affecting my blood sugars. Now, I did end up going a little high that night, but what I noticed for me is, and I drink light beer, by the way. I don't drink full flavored beer very much. It's just not my drink of choice. So the beers that I drink don't have quite as many carbs in it, but it's very much like insulin for me. It just lowers me. While it lowers me, it may not lower you. Everybody is different. We all know that our bodies are completely different, and our diabetes reacts completely different in every single person. What may work for me may not work for you. But here's how I figured out what worked for me. I was able to figure out that more than the beer affecting me while I'm drinking it, it usually tends to affect me the next day. So usually the next day I kind of struggle with keeping my numbers up. So this time around I was able to do I did the 75% temp basal the night of the party, but only for like 3 hours. Nothing major. And then I was a little high. My blood sugar was a little high before I went to bed, which I corrected for. But when I got up the next day, even with the eating and giving myself my normal insulin to carb ratio boluses, I noticed that it wasn't really staying even above 100 where I wanted it to be. So I was able to change my temp basal. I took it back down to 75%, and I did that for 6 hours. And that was perfect for those 6 hours for me. So temp basal, good for drinking. Not getting drunk, just drinking. Just saying, just putting that out there. Disclaimer. Okay, so hopefully I'll have another video coming out on Wednesday. I will be changing, I got the Enlight sensor, and I'll be changing it for the first time all by myself. So I'm going to do a video with that, but I don't know for sure when I'm going to publish it, because I also want to do another video that kind of tells you what I've done with the sensor so far and what it's done for me so far, which is actually quite interesting. So keep an ear out. Hopefully that'll be coming. Have a great night. Bye, guys.